Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 274. Happy Friday. Thank you guys for tuning in and joining me. I want to start today by letting you know this is going to be my last podcast of 2024. I've been going since January of this year, doing a podcast every Monday and Friday, and going to take a couple of weeks off to end out this year. I will be back with episode 275 on the infamous January 6th. And we all know January 6th is the day that the new Congress will be sworn in. It is the day that the Trump election will be certified. And then Trump will be sworn in with no problems, hopefully, a few weeks after that. And then they'll start kicking off the hearings on these congressional nominees. And that's what we've been talking about in the last podcast. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last podcast, talking about what's motivating Donald Trump in these picks, these picks that are being projected by the media. Nobody has any trust in the media. Nobody trusts the media, but the media is projecting fear over many of these picks. Many of these picks, the media is saying that they're controversial. A lot of Democrats are speaking out against them. Not only Democrats. We're going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard today. She's got a lot of Republicans. She used to be a Democrat herself, so she's, got a lot of Republicans shaking in their boots. But again, we're going to be picking up where we left off in the last podcast, talking about what they did to Donald Trump in the 2016 election, going into his first presidency when he was president-elect, the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, the intelligence operation that they pulled on Donald Trump, because this was an intelligence operation. We were talking about the situation, the circumstances of the 2016 election. 100 years from now, when the historians look back and they look back at the 2016 election, they're going to be shocked to learn that both of the major party candidates were under criminal investigation by the FBI's counterintelligence division. They're going to be shocked to learn that. And they're going to be shocked to learn these other facts that I'm going to continue laying out for you today. But in the last podcast, we were talking about two intelligence reports that were seemingly intelligence reports. This was all part of this intelligence operation. The one intelligence report that was sold to us and sold to the FBI as an intelligence report was compiled by Christopher Steele, a former, and again, I say you're never really former British intelligence or CIA or intelligence community, but he was a freelance. So he went from MI6 to become a freelance intelligence agent, a contracted intelligence agent, and Christopher Steele, working for a company that Hillary Clinton's campaign hired in 2016, Fusion GPS, commissioned Christopher Steele to compile what we believed was an intelligence report. But it wasn't an intelligence report. It was just political opposition research. And then we were talking about the intelligence report that the intelligence community, the IC, under the DNI, which we're going to talk a lot about today, the position of Director of National Intelligence, they put out the first the letter that James Clapper did with Jay Johnson on October 7th. This was after the WikiLeaks dump of John Podesta's emails, DNC emails. They showed how the DNC was under Debbie Wasserman Schultz as the chairperson of the DNC. They were rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders and his supporters for Hillary Clinton. And a lot of other stuff that were in these emails that WikiLeaks leaked. And James Clapper came out with a letter with Jay Johnson and said it had all the hallmarks from Russia. They didn't know for sure that it was from Russia, but it had all the hallmarks of Russian activity, is what they said. And then they came out with another intelligence report on January 6th of 2017, and that was the assessing Russians' activities and intentions. And in the October 7th letter, they said that, they didn't have any proof at that time that this was had anything to do with the Russian government, is what they said in October 7th. On January 6th, the 17 agencies intelligence report that they put out, 17 agencies, which was only 3 agencies, that report said that they believed, they assessed, it was an assessment, that they assessed with high confidence that Vladimir Putin directed this activity, that it did have a direct link to the Russian government. So this was all put out by James Clapper. Hold on one moment. I'm looking at this and you're not looking at this. James Clapper. Here was the DNI when all of this was going on. So today we're going to talk about another intelligence report. And this intelligence report that we're going to talk about today is probably one of the most important intelligence reports in American history. This intelligence report was never meant for public consumption. This was a very, very, very private intelligence report, only for the President of the United States and the President of the United States. Not even the entire cabinet, the only certain members of his cabinet and the President of the United States are the only ones that get this information in what is called the Presidential Daily Brief. And this is a daily brief that the President of the United States gets from the CIA. And this intelligence report was declassified because this intelligence report that we're going to talk about today was leaked. And it was leaked to the public after 9/11. And this report, this Presidential Daily Brief, was a brief that George Bush got while he was on vacation at his Crawford Ranch on August 6, Monday, August 6, 2001. This is 36 days before 9/11, before September 11. George W. Bush at his Crawford Ranch gets this intelligence brief and from the CIA. And this CIA brief is titled, Bin Laden Determined to Strike in. Bin Laden Determined to Strike in. Bin Laden determined to strike in the United States. What does this "in" mean? This means in the United States, in the continental United States, or in Hawaii, or in Puerto Rico, or in Alaska, but in the United States, either in the lower 48 or in one of those other regions, which are technically the United States. That's what this "in" stands for, in the United States. And let's read a little bit of this Wikipedia page. Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the United States was a presidential daily brief prepared by the Central Intelligence and given to U.S. President George Bush on Monday, October 6. The brief warned. That's very important here in the Wikipedia page. The brief warned 36 days before 9/11 attacks of terrorism threats of Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, including, quotes, it says here in quotes, patterns of suspicious activity in this country consistent with preparing. You don't prepare to do things in the past. You prepare to do things in the future, right? You don't prepare to do things in the past. And this is a quote from this intelligence brief. From this intelligence brief, to quote, including patterns of suspicious activity in this country consistent with preparing for hijacking of U.S. aircraft. It just says hijacking, but preparing for hijacking is what it says. They're preparing. Bin Laden determined to strike in the United States, and they're preparing to hijack planes. 36 days before they actually hijacked the planes, George Bush received this intelligence brief at his Crawford Ranch. Now, I've talked about this intelligence brief many times before, but you have to understand now, why do you think that the person who leaked this very, very secure, when Dick Cheney was asked about it, he says that I can't believe that we're even talking about, when he was asked about it by Tim Russer on Meet the Press after this leak, he says, I can't believe that we're even talking about this in this interview, that we shouldn't even be having this conversation, because this piece of intelligence is such a secure piece of intelligence, the presidential daily brief from the CIA, that we shouldn't even be talking about this. Why do you think this was leaked? And I mean, the person who leaked it, we still don't know to this day, 24 years later, who actually leaked this report. But why do you think that it was leaked? And who leaked it? Someone who was in the CIA, who had access to this, maybe? I mean, could it have been someone from the Bush administration? I doubt it. But, I mean, who leaked this thing? It was leaked to CBS, and CBS did a report on it. But why would they leak this thing? Because it says right here, it's telling you, they had all of the facts to prevent 9/11. They had all of the facts. I mean, all you had to do is stop them from hijacking the planes. It says it right here in the document that they're preparing to hijack planes. After they hijacked the planes and flew them into buildings and killed almost 3,000 Americans, through his FAA, through an executive action that George Bush did, he demanded that the cockpit doors be locked in flight, which is something that is still, active today. You get on the flight, as soon as the plane takes off, they lock the cockpit doors. That executive action alone would have prevented 9/11. It would have prevented these terrorists from taking over these airplanes with box cutters. So what did the president do? What did George Bush do after he got this confidential intelligence brief? We'll talk about that here in a moment. Here's another piece of, I don't know if this is intelligence. This is just a letter that a FBI agent, this is July 2001. This is almost 2 months before 9/11. An FBI agent that was in Phoenix. This is called the Phoenix Memo. And it says, the Phoenix Memo is a letter sent to FBI headquarters. So going back to the podcast we did where we listened to the interview that Jon Stewart on The Daily Show was doing with Sally Yates, the Deputy Attorney General that was the Deputy Attorney General during this time period that we're talking about. And Sally Yates was making the distinction between the political appointees, the bureaucracy at FBI headquarters there at the Hoover Building in Washington, D.C., and then the career field agents, the career FBI agents that are out in the field, doing investigations, looking for crimes, the distinction between those people and the people, the bureaucratic political appointees at the Hoover Building there in Washington. So this guy in Phoenix, this field agent, is a career FBI field agent out doing the work. And he discovers that all of these Middle Easterners are taking flying lessons, and they're not interested in learning how to land the planes. They just want to know how to control the planes, is what this guy found out. Now, mind you, this is from the FBI. This field agent, let's read this. Phoenix Memo is a letter sent to FBI headquarters on 2 months before 9/11, on July 10th, 2001, by FBI Special Agent Keith Williams, recommending he had not only sent this letter to the Hoover Building there in Washington. He had recommendations recommending the assembling of a worldwide listing of civil aviation schools. Williams, then stationed in Phoenix, Arizona, was investigating students at some of these schools for possible terrorism links. Okay. So what I'm explaining to you is that the FBI, if they would have followed up on Williams' recommendations, he was already investigating Middle Eastern students at this flight school learning to fly. At the same time, the CIA is sending George Bush, the president of the United States, memos talking about Al-Qaeda in the country and making preparations for hijacking. I mean, you would be able to put the two and two together. Oh, FBI's got students over here learning to fly, don't want to learn how to land a plane. CIA's over here, and they got information that Al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization, is in the country, and they're planning to hijack planes. They want to learn how to fly the planes over here. FBI, CIA, they're trying to hijack the planes. Nobody can put this together. Nobody can put this together, George Bush. You're talking about a month before 9/11, 36 days before 9/11, Phoenix memo, 2 months before 9/11. None of this stuff that this field agent in Phoenix recommended and that he sent to the Hoover Building there in Washington, D.C., none of this stuff was acted on. The CIA memo before 9/11 that George Bush got, no action was taken. The Phoenix memo, no action was taken. Zacarias Moussaoui. Zacarias Moussaoui was one of the hijackers. There were supposed to be 20 hijackers that took part in the attacks of 9/11, but it ended up only being 19 because this guy, Zacarias Moussaoui, was captured before 9/11. And he was captured in Minneapolis. It says on August 16th is before September 11th. This is like 3 weeks before September 11th. On August 16th, 2001, Moussaoui was arrested by Harry Sammet of the FBI and INS agents in Minnesota and charged with immigration violation. So he was charged with immigration. Now, with Moussaoui, when he was arrested 3 weeks before 9/11, he had all the plans for 9/11 on him. Materials itemized when he was arrested included a laptop. He had the laptop computer with all the information about the plans for 9/11 3 weeks later. He had 2 knives, flight manuals, pertaining to Boeing 747 aircrafts. This guy had on him when he was arrested 3 weeks before 9/11 in Minneapolis. So you got the CIA telling George Bush 36 days before 9/11, hey, they're in the country, they're preparing to hijack planes. You got FBI memo going to the Hoover Building there in Washington saying, look, I got students at this aviation school. They may be terrorists. They're learning to fly. We need to talk to these guys. And then you got the arrest of Moussaoui. Moussaoui is arrested 3 weeks before 9/11, and he's got all the plans on his laptop, 2 knives, flight manuals pertaining to Boeing 747. No one can put this together. No one can put this together. He had a flight simulator computer program, fighting gloves and shin guards, and computer disk with information about crop dusting. Crop dusting. All right, let's get started with our first clip. This was a report about the Phoenix memo. Take a listen.
Try as he did, an alert and smart FBI agent couldn't get much attention last summer when he tried to alert his bosses about something suspicious he noticed before September 11th. He's getting plenty of attention now.
Yeah, it's too late now.
Everyone wants to hear what he has to say, including Congress. CBS's Jim Stewart reports tonight on the man and the memo.
FBI agent Kenneth Williams, the man behind the memo that's put the Bureau in such hot water, was paraded before the Senate today, where he tried to explain that even if his suggestion to interview Middle Eastern students at U.S. flight schools had been taken, it probably wouldn't have stopped September the 11th.
It probably wouldn't have stopped September 11th is what he says, because he didn't want to blame. Yeah, I'm not blaming anyone, but even if my advice would have been taken to interview these students that would later hijack planes, that it probably wouldn't have prevented September 11th. What do you mean it probably wouldn't have? It probably would have prevented September 11th. What the hell are you talking about?
The man behind the memo that's put the Bureau in such hot water was paraded before the Senate today, where he tried to explain that even if his suggestion to interview Middle Eastern students at U.S. flight schools had been taken, it probably wouldn't have stopped September the 11th. What the senators wanted to hear, however, was why his suggestion wasn't acted on in the first place.
Why his suggestion was not acted on? Why didn't they do anything when he sent this memo to the Hoover Building?
And even to this day, no one seems to know who knew what, why, or where.
Oh, yeah, we know who knew what.
These critical information went at FBI headquarters.
Officials.
We know who knew what. Now, who was the director of the FBI when this letter was sent? Well, it was Robert Mueller, but just before Robert Mueller actually was not the director of the FBI, because there was an interim director when Louis Freeh left. So Louis Freeh, I was explaining to you a few podcasts ago when they were making the big deal about Director Ray. Oh, he hasn't served his 10 years. He haven't served his 10 years. Well, Louis Freeh didn't serve 10 years. Louis Freeh only served 7 years or 8 years from 1993 to 2001. So in the summer of 2001, in June of 2001, when all this stuff is kicking off, Louis Freeh just resigns from the FBI. Didn't really even give a reason why he was resigning from the FBI. So he resigns from the FBI in June of 2001. And then this guy, Thomas Picknard, becomes the interim director of the FBI before Robert Mueller becomes the director of the FBI. And Robert Mueller, we all know from the Mueller investigation, this guy becomes the special counsel when they finally appoint a special counsel to look into Trump's Russian connectivity and all the stuff from the Steele dossier and Trump's collusion with Russia to steal the 2016 election. This guy becomes the director of the FBI, but he doesn't become, he becomes the special counsel, but he doesn't become the director of the FBI until September 4th. That's when he actually is confirmed as the director of the FBI. And if you notice, this is just, a week before 9/11. So Mueller is he's confirmed as the director of the FBI, but he was part of the FBI, and in the FBI before he became the director, but he becomes the director, political appointee. Bush appoints him as the director, and then he becomes the actual director, where he's confirmed on September 4th. So when these documents from the field agents there in Arizona, the Phoenix memo, when these documents are coming to the Hoover Building, there's a shakeup there at the Hoover Building because Louis Freeh had left, and you had an acting director, and Robert Mueller was coming in a few weeks later or a few months later. So I guess you could say maybe that's the reason that the FBI didn't take up this the advice of this field agent and interview these Middle Eastern students at flight schools that were learning to fly and didn't care to learn how to land. And then again, when the Moussaoui arrest happened, you were in that same period of the interim director of the FBI. And so maybe that is what happened. But Colleen Raleigh was one of the FBI agents there in Minneapolis where the Moussaoui arrest took place. And she became a huge whistleblower in 2002 when she wrote a letter to Director Mueller. I just wanted you to listen to a little bit about who Colleen Raleigh is.
People who worked with her described Raleigh as tenacious and a straight shooter.
What you see is what you get, and what you get is an honest opinion when you ask it of her.
She spent nearly half her 24-year career in the Minneapolis FBI field office. She was the go-to person for field agents who wanted wiretaps or surveillance authority. And after 9/11, she wrote a scorching memo to FBI Director Robert Mueller. It detailed how FBI headquarters thwarted her attempts, pre-9/11, to get approval for a warrant to search the computer of Zacarias Moussaoui.
So listen to what Raleigh, the accusations that she makes in this letter. She becomes a whistleblower. She writes this explosive letter to Comey. It goes to Congress, and she's making accusations that the FBI headquarters, the Hoover building there in Washington, while they're, we're in this period of not having a permanent director. Your director had just resigned. You're in the process of nominating someone else. That the command there at the Hoover building in Washington, that they were obstructing her attempts to get search warrants so they could look through this guy's computer. And he had all the plans and everything for 9/11. If they would have got the search warrant, were able to look through this guy's computer, but they were unable to get the search warrant. And she claimed that the FBI headquarters were obstructing her in her attempts to get this search warrant so they could look through this guy's computer. He had all the plans in his computer. He had flight simulators. He had all of these things that lead you to believe that this guy, I mean, if you put the pieces together, the Phoenix memo, the CIA memo to Bush, CIA's got terrorists in the country making preparations to hijack planes. They were obstructing her ability to get this information, is what this whistleblower, Colleen Raleigh, says in this explosive letter.
Is a very forthright, direct, unassuming, intelligent person.
People who worked with her described Raleigh as tenacious and a straight shooter.
What you see is what you get, and what you get is an honest opinion when you ask it of her.
She spent nearly half her 24-year career in the Minneapolis FBI field office. She was the go-to person for field agents who wanted wiretaps or surveillance authority. And after 9/11, she wrote a scorching memo to FBI Director Robert Mueller. It detailed how FBI headquarters thwarted her attempts, pre-9/11, to get approval for a warrant to search the computer of Zacarias Moussaoui.
And let me just take a moment to thank Agent Raleigh for her letter. It is critically important that I hear criticisms of the organization, including criticisms of me, in order to improve the organization, to improve the FBI.
Oh, great. Raleigh did not lose her job. She did give up her anonymity. Her critical memo put her in the middle of a political and media firestorm.
So I want you to understand this, that when Raleigh comes out in 2002, I guess about 6 months after 9/11, and blows the whistle and writes this letter to Mueller, this is around the same time that this confidential presidential daily brief from the Central Intelligence is leaked to the public through CBS News. So you have leaks, intelligence briefs, confidential intelligence briefs being leaked to the press. You have whistleblowers coming out the agents from Arizona blowing the whistle that hey, I wrote this memo to the headquarters there in Washington. They didn't do anything. You have Colleen Raleigh coming out and blowing the whistle. So you have leaks, whistleblowings going on. And what these people were saying is that we knew we had the intelligence. If we wanted to, we could have prevented 9/11 is what these people were saying. These are the field agents. These are the everyday career agents that are out there doing the work. They had the information. If their work would have been acted on, if George Bush would have acted on what the work that the CIA had done, could have prevented 9/11. If the FBI headquarters would have acted on the Phoenix memo or helping these agents in Minneapolis get the warrant so they could have searched Moussaouy's computer, they could have prevented 9/11. There was no action that was taken. I want you to listen to a little bit of the testimony that Colleen Raleigh made to the Senate. Take a listen.
I do want to welcome Special Agent Colleen M. Raleigh of the FBI.
The first thing I want to do is thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I never really anticipated this kind of impact when I wrote this letter to Director Mueller over 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you know, I think they've been saying, and one of the things was I saw the new direction of the FBI. Perhaps it was kind of hard to discern when it was first announced, but I thought I saw some impetus towards a little more additional bureaucracy and micromanaging from headquarters. And I wanted to point out to Director Mueller that seemed to fly in the face of what we should have learned from September 11th. And
yeah, the problem was headquarters, is what she says. She says the problem was the Hoover building there in Washington. The problem wasn't the work that the field agents were doing out in the field in Arizona, in Minneapolis. They were doing their work. They were doing a good job. The problem was the headquarters, is what the whistleblower, Colleen Raleigh, said. So now brings us to the creation of the Office of Director of National Intelligence. Prior to 9/11, there was no Director of National Intelligence. Prior to 9/11, all of these intelligence agencies were completely independent. And that's where the narrative for the necessity for the Director of National Intelligence came from. They told us that after 9/11, the reason that we needed an office that directed all of the intelligence agencies, a office that all of the intelligence agencies are under, that are managing all the intelligence coming from all of these separate independent agencies. The reason they said we needed a DNI is because they said that we didn't have anyone managing all of these different pieces of intelligence, the intelligence from the CIA or the intelligence, from the FBI. There was nobody managing all of these different, intelligence streams. And because nobody was managing all of these different, pieces of intelligence from all of these agencies, that's why the information slipped through the cracks, and we didn't put it all together because there was nobody overseeing all of this intelligence, all of these agencies. We need an office that oversees all of the intelligence agencies, that is in control of all of these intelligence agencies, so this doesn't happen again, that we have information slipping through the cracks and we have a huge attack, which was completely bogus. The necessity for a Director of National Intelligence was completely bogus. They had the intelligence. And if they would have acted on the intelligence, then they could have prevented 9/11. You don't need this. They didn't need this Office of Director of National Intelligence, but this is a very, very powerful position, the Director of National Intelligence. And the entire purpose that this office was created was to coordinate the intelligence of all of these separate agencies. The 17, now 18, 16, now 17 agencies with Space Force intelligence. But The reason that they created the DNI after 9/11 was to manage all these different independent intelligence agencies and to know what was going on in every single one of these agencies. Every single one of these intelligence agencies is under the Director of National Intelligence. But again, I think that this office was completely unnecessary. They had the intelligence before 9/11 to prevent 9/11. They didn't need this office, but this is a very, very, very powerful office. This is why I laugh when I played the clip in the last podcast where James Clapper, as the Director of National Intelligence, says, well, talking about the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, what was the impetus of opening up this investigation into one of the major party candidates in an election year going into the 2016 election? What initiated that investigation, the Crossfire Hurricane investigation? And the guy on CNN says, well, it wasn't the Steele dossier, was it? That's the conspiracy theory that it was the Steele dossier. And the FBI now says that, no, it was Papadopoulos. And Clapper says, well, Papadopoulos wasn't on my radar when we left. Played the clip in the last podcast. Papadopoulos wasn't on my radar when we left, but it could have possibly been. I'm like, you clown. The entire reason for your job as Director of National Intelligence, for you to know why the investigation into a presidential candidate started and what started that investigation, and if it was Papadopoulos or the Steele dossier, you should known that. And it's hilarious that people are okay with having this guy, James Clapper. And when we come back next year, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what this guy did. Completely lied to Congress under oath. Nothing happened to him. And people, you're okay with having this guy as DNI, but Tulsi Gabbard, for some reason, is a bad choice for DNI. They're so afraid of Tulsi Gabbard. They're more afraid of Tulsi Gabbard and her having this very, very powerful position of DNI, Director of National Intelligence. They're more afraid of her than they are of Pam Bondi at DOJ, than they are of Kash Patel at FBI, than they are of RFK at the Department of Health. Out of all the picks that Donald Trump has selected to be in his cabinet, Tulsi Gabbard as DNI is the one that scares them the most, because this is a very, very important position. I want you to read a little bit of, this is the actual letter that Colleen Raleigh, when she came out and blew the whistle and wrote this letter to Robert Mueller. I just want you to read a few sentences of this first paragraph and what she says to Robert Mueller. She says, and she wrote this again, this is May 21st, 2002 is when Colleen Raleigh writes this letter, and she becomes a whistleblower about the intelligence that they had prior to 9/11. And she brings up the Phoenix memo. She brings up Moussaoui arrest and how they had all of the information. They could have prevented 3,000 Americans from being killed on American soil. They had everything that they needed to stop this, and none of the things that they recommended or none of the requests that they made for warrants, they were basically obstructed by the Hoover building there in Washington. And Colleen Raleigh says to Robert Mueller, I feel at this point I have to put my concerns in writing concerning the important topic of the FBI's response to evidence of terrorism activity in the United States prior to September 11. The issue is fundamentally one of integrity. She puts integrity in all caps. In all caps, integrity. The issues are fundamentally ones of integrity and go to the heart of the FBI's law enforcement mission and mandate. Moreover, at this critical juncture in fashioning future policy to promote the most effective handling of ongoing future threats to the United States citizens' security, it is of absolute importance that an unbiased, completely accurate picture emerge of the FBI's current investigation and management strengths and failures. So she goes into everything and bullet points and explains everything that I've just basically explained to you, that they had all of the tools to stop 9/11 and that they didn't stop it. Again, I wanted to point out that this letter was written by Colleen Raleigh on May 21st, 2002, and the bin Laden is determined to attack the United States was leaked on, where's the show that it was leaked? So leaked in 2002 is what it says. So I think that this was leaked around June, it was leaked around June 2002. So what I'm explaining to you is that you have these leaks coming out at the same time you have whistleblowers coming out, saying that, look, we could have prevented this. Okay. So now I want you to listen to, this is Condoleezza Rice. Condoleezza Rice, her job, on the day 9/11 happened and nearly 3,000 Americans were killed on American soil. Her job title was National Security Advisor. That's who Condoleezza Rice was on the day of 9/11. Her job was national security. So this confidential CIA brief is leaked to the press. I'm sorry. I know exactly when this was leaked because all you have, May 15th is what it says right here. It was leaked on May 15th. And then Colleen Raleigh comes out with her letter on May 21st. So you're talking a week after this confidential CIA document is leaked, Colleen Raleigh writes her letter and becomes a whistleblower. So within that same week, that's what I wanted you to understand. But the day after this leak on May 15th, May 16th, the National Security Advisor comes out and she does nothing but lie. And I'm going to show you how this woman lies here, going back to the title of the document. And at the time that Condoleezza Rice, the day after this leak, and this is reported, the leaks, they don't, when CBS reports on this confidential CIA document, they don't show the document. It's still classified. Everything in this document is classified. This is the presidential daily brief. At the time that Condoleezza Rice comes out, it's still classified. So CBS reports on it, but they don't show the document. Nobody knows what the title of the document is before it's declassified. Nobody knows what's in the document before it's declassified. Nobody knows that it said that they were preparing for hijacking in the document. Although I think CBS does point out in their reporting that the document does say that, look, they're planning to hijack planes. Says something about that, but people don't know the title, and they don't know any of the details of this intelligence report. They just know that there is a intelligence report, and the Bush administration's received intelligence 36 days prior to 9/11. It's still classified. So that's what you got to understand is when the National Security Advisor comes out the day after this major leak of a CIA intelligence report, that it's not public. The title, it's not public what's in there, and all this woman does is lie. I want you to emphasize the title though, because now it's been declassified. Now we know the title, and I want to emphasize that it says Bin Laden determined to strike in the United States, in the lower 48 or Alaska or Hawaii or Puerto Rico, is somewhere in the United States. All right. Let's listen to the National Security Advisor.
I'm going to give you a chronology of the events that occurred during the spring and summer of 2001. But I want to start with a little definitional work. When we talk about threats, they come in many varieties. Very often we have uncorroborated information. Sometimes we have corroborated but very general information. But I can tell you that it is almost never the case that we have information that is specific as to time, place, or method.
Yeah, it didn't need to be specific to time, place, and method. It was specific to they're preparing to hijack planes. That was specific. They're preparing to hijack planes. That's specific.
Of attack. In the period starting in December 2000, the intelligence community started reporting increase in traffic concerning terrorist activities. In the April-May timeframe, there was specific threat reporting about al-Qaeda attacks against U.S. targets or interest that might be in the works. Now, there was a clear concern that something was up, that something was coming.
Yeah.
But it was principally focused overseas. The areas of most concern were the Middle East, the Arabian Peninsula, and Europe.
The areas of concern were the Middle East, that there was something up, but the focus was overseas, and that the information that we were getting was not about in the United States, is what Condoleezza Rice is saying. That the information that we were getting was about overseas, is what she says, not in the United States.
In the June timeframe, arrests for the Millennium Plot. There was testimony by the participants in the Millennium Plot that Abu Zubaydah had said that there might be interest in attacking the United States. And this comes out of testimony that was there as a result of the Millennium Plot. And then on June 26th, there was a threat spike. And as a result, again, focusing overseas, the State Department issued a worldwide caution. Again, that was June 26th, and you probably remember that caution. Now, the FAA was also concerned of threats to U.S. citizens, such as airline hijackings, and therefore issued an information circular and an information circular goes out to private carriers from law enforcement, saying that we have a concern. That was a June 22nd information circular. At the end of June, there was a status of threat and action meeting that what we call the Counterterrorism Security Group. It is a group that is interagency that meets under the direction of an NSC Special Assistant, Dick Clark, at that time. There was a meeting of that, and Dick Clark reported to me that steps were being taken by the CSG. On July 2nd, as a result of some of that work, the FBI released a message saying that there are threats to be worried about overseas, but while we cannot foresee attacks domestically, we cannot rule them out.
While we cannot foresee attacks domestically, is what she says. Domestically. It says in the United States. That's domestic. In the United States. That's domestic. It's not overseas, lady. And because this was not declassified at the time she's given this speech and lying to the American people and lying to the public, why would they need to lie if there was nothing to cover up? Why would they need to lie? They told us that this document, while it was still declassified, that it said bin Laden determined to strike the United States, not in the United States, the United States, and that everything was focused overseas, that we were concerned overseas, but there was nothing domestic for us to worry about, is what this woman says. The National Security Advisor is her title.
This is an inlet, and again, an inlet goes out to law enforcement from the FBI. On July 2nd, the FAA issued another IC saying that Rassam, again associated with the Millennium Plot, said that there was an intention of using explosives in an airport terminal. This was a very specific IC. On July 5th, the threat reporting had become sufficiently robust, though not, again, very specific, but sufficiently robust. There was a lot of chatter in the system.
Yeah, it said they were hijacking planes.
In his morning meeting, the president asked me to go back and to see what was being done about all of the chatter that was there. Andy Card and I met that afternoon with Dick Clark, and Dick Clark informed us that he had already had a meeting of the CSG core group and that he was holding another meeting that afternoon that would be focused on threats and that would bring the domestic agencies into the CSG. On July 6th, the CSG core players met again because there was concern about, very high concern, about potential attacks in Paris, Turkey, Rome, and they acted to go so far as to suspend non-essential travel of U.S. counterterrorism staff. So this is a period in which, again, potential attacks overseas were heightened enough that there was almost daily meeting now, sometimes twice a day, of either the CSG or its subgroups. Contingency planning was done on how to deal with multiple simultaneous attacks around the world. The period in mid-July was a point of another major threat spike, and it all related to the G8 summit that was coming up. And in fact,
all right, you definitely have to go and watch this entire press conference. All she does is lie. She says that the document was titled "Bin Laden Determined to Strike the United States." All of their concerns were over overseas targets, that there was nothing domestic to worry about, is what she says. And then I got to play this part because she does say that there wasn't a warning. Hold on, I got to play that part where she says there was no warning.
The FBI issued another inlet in state of alert. On August 1st, the FBI said that the most important and most likely thing was that they would take over an airliner holding passengers and demand the release of one of their operatives. What he had done historically in 1997, in 1998. It mentioned hijacking, but hijacking in the traditional sense.
Hold on, I got to go back. I'm sorry.
An analytic report.
Here it is, right here.
That said anniversary. And again, reiterated the message that had been in the July 2nd inlet. Now, on August 6th, the president received a presidential daily briefing.
So she's talking so now she's getting into this actual report, the August 6th report, where she says that, that it was titled Bin Laden to strike the United States and not in the United States, and everything was overseas. There was nothing domestic. This is what she's talking about, the August 6th presidential daily brief.
Which was not a warning briefing.
She says it was not a warning briefing. Okay? Patterns of suspicious activity in this country consistent with preparations for hijacking. How in the hell is that not a warning? How's that not a warning, National Security Advisor? Please.
But an analytic report.
It was an analytic report.
This analytic report, which did not have warning information in it of the kind that said they are talking about an attack against so forth or so on.
Preparations for hijacking. Preparations for hijacking.
UBL's methods of operation, talked about what he had done historically in 1997, in 1998. It mentioned hijacking, but hijacking in the traditional sense.
I just thought that it mentioned hijacking, but hijacking in the traditional sense. What the hell are you talking about, lady? You're talking about... So hijacking in the traditional sense is better than hijacking and flying planes in the building? I mean, why didn't you guys try to prevent them from hijacking planes domestically? Why didn't you guys try to prevent that? What do you mean hijacking in the traditional sense? Like, that makes it better. This is ridiculous.
And in a sense, said that the most important and most likely thing was that they would take over an airliner holding passengers and demand the release of one of their operatives. And the blind sheikh was mentioned by name, as, even though he's not an operative of Al-Qaeda, but as somebody who might be bargained in this way.
Wow.
I want to reiterate, it was not a warning. There's no specific time, place, or method mentioned. What you have seen in the run-up that I've talked about is that the FAA was reacting to the same kind of generalized information about
So she says that it wasn't a warning. It was mainly focused overseas. That it was a historical document. I don't know how you prepare to do stuff in the past, or you're determined to do stuff in the past, but bin Laden determined to strike in the United States is not in the past. That's in the future. Preparations for hijacking. That's not in the past. That's in the future. That's definitely a warning, and it is domestic in the United States. So again, why did they lie? If there's nothing to hide, why did they lie? This is, God, what's his name? I can't believe that I'm drawing blank on his name. He was the senator from Nebraska. He sat on the, Bob Kerry is his name. Bob Kerry, the senator from Nebraska, he sat on the 9/11 commission. This is an interview that he gave after the 2004 election when Bush won re-election. Take a listen.
Even though, by the way, there's a credible case that the president's own negligence prior to 9/11, at least in part, contributed to the disaster in the first place.
How so?
Well, the 9/11 report says in Chapter 8, now it's beyond the campaign, so the promise I had to keep this out of the campaign is over. And the 9/11 report in Chapter 8 says that in the summer of 2001, the government ignored repeated warnings by the CIA. Ignored.
And the FBI.
And didn't do anything to harden our border security, didn't do anything to harden airport security, didn't do anything to engage local law enforcement, didn't do anything to round up INS and consular offices and say we have to shut this down, and didn't warn the American people. The famous presidential daily briefing on August 6th, we say in the report that the briefing officers believed that there was a considerable sense of urgency and it was current. So there was a case that could be made that wasn't made.
And that's why they leaked it. That's why they leaked it, because it was a very important document, and whoever leaked it wanted American people to know, look, that we did our job to prevent this. The reason that this wasn't prevented is because the people at the White House, the people at the FBI building, they didn't want to prevent it, but we did our job. And that's why it was leaked. But the most important thing he says in this interview, Bob Kerry says, is that they didn't warn the American people when they got this document. This document that is titled Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the United States. There was no warning given to the American people. Preparations for hijacking in the United States. No warning given to the American people. And when, after Condoleezza Rice finishes her opening statements in this press conference, the very first question that she is asked is, why weren't the American people warned about these facts before they got on the planes in the fall of 2001? Why? You had the information, Bush administration. You had the intelligence from the CIA that said they were preparing to hijack planes. Why didn't you tell the American people? And it's the most important question that anyone should be asking at this time.
I want to reiterate that during this time, the overwhelming bulk of the evidence was that this was an attack that was likely to take place overseas. The State Department, the Defense Department were on very high states of alert. The embassies have very clear protocols on how to button up, so does the military. That was done. But at home, while there was much less reporting or chatter about something at home, people were thinking about the U.S., and the FBI was involved in a number of investigations of potential al-Qaeda personnel operating in the United States. And that's my opening, and I'll take question. Ron?
Why did the American public know about these facts before they got on planes in the summer and fall of last year?
It is always...
Why didn't American people know about these facts? Why didn't you guys warn the American people? Listen to what this woman says.
In the fall of last year?
It is always, as you've learned since September 11th, a question of how good the information is and whether or not...
The information was pretty good, lady. The information was pretty good. The information said preparations for hijacking. They did hijack. They hijacked planes and they flew them into buildings. The information was great. And I just want you to listen to a little bit of her testimony after this document is is finally declassified in 2004. The American people know what the title is. They know what's in it. And Condoleezza Rice is testifying in front of the 9/11 Commission. We'll just listen to a little bit of this. We're almost done.
I want to ask you some questions about the August 6, 2001 PDB. We had been advised in writing by the CIA on March 19, 2004, that the August 6 PDB was prepared and self-generated by a CIA employee. The CIA clarified its version of events, saying that questions by the president prompted them to prepare the August 6 PDB. You have said to us that the president directed the CIA to prepare the August 6 PDB. The extraordinary high terrorist attack threat level in the summer of 2001 is well documented. And Richard Clarke's testimony about the possibility of an attack against the United States homeland was repeatedly discussed from May to August within the intelligence community.
And
that is
ignored.
well documented.
Ignored.
You
He was
acknowledged
ignored.
that Richard Clarke told you that al-Qaeda cells were in the United States. Did you tell the president at any time prior to August 6th of the existence of al-Qaeda cells in the United States?
Not overseas, lady.
Just make certain.
If you
Not
could just
overseas,
answer that question,
in the
because
United
I only
States.
have a very
I
limited-
understand, Commissioner, but it's
Did you tell
important.
the
It's important that
president?
I also address. It's also important, Commissioner, that I address the other issues that you have raised. So I will do it quickly, but if you'll just give me a
Well,
moment.
my only question to you is whether you
I understand,
told the
Commissioner, but I will,
president.
if you'll just give me a moment, I will address fully the questions that you've asked. First of all, yes, the August 6th PDB was in response to questions of the president. There was no recommendation that we do something about this. The FBI was pursuing it. I really don't remember.
There was no recommendation that we do something. There was no recommendation that we do something about the fact that they're making preparations to hijack planes, is what the National Security Advisor says. There's no recommendation that we do something.
The president. There was no recommendation that we do something about this. The FBI was pursuing it. I really don't remember, Commissioner, whether I discussed this with the president.
Thank you.
Remember very well that the president was aware that there were issues inside the United States. He talked to people about this. But I don't remember the al-Qaeda cells as being something that we were told we needed to do something about.
Isn't it a fact, Dr. Rice, that the August 6 PDB warned against possible attacks in this country? And I ask you whether you recall the title of that PDB.
I believe the title was Bin Laden determined to attack inside the United States.
Yeah, that's what this title was.
Now,
but back here on the day after that document was leaked, y'all said that, and before it was declassified, y'all said it was titled Bin Laden determined to attack the United States, not inside the United States. You said that you wanted to reiterate that the information in the document was mainly focused overseas, is what you said. And now you know that it was domestic, and now that the document's been declassified, you know that it is titled inside the United States. That's weird.
Title of that PDB.
I believe the title was Bin Laden determined to attack inside the United States. Now, the PDB, no, Mr. Benveniste,
I will get into the...
All she does is lie. All she does is lie. So again, I had so much more that I wanted to share with you guys today. We didn't really even get into Tulsi Gabbard, but this is the reason that they don't want Tulsi Gabbard to be DNI. Tulsi Gabbard, they use 9/11 to sell the Iraq war, where Tulsi Gabbard was a combat medic in the Iraq war. And then she came and became a member of Congress. Okay. Tulsi Gabbard, they do not want this woman to be DNI because they don't want her to be another William Colby. Who's William Colby? William Colby was the head of the CIA during the Church Committee. William Colby is the one who gave up all of the family jewels. Let me read you a little bit of William Colby was American intelligence officer who served as director of national intelligence from September 1973 to January 76 for 3 years. During World War II, he was served as officer of strategic services. After the war, he joined the newly created Central Intelligence. Before and during the Vietnam War, Colby served as the chief stations in Saigon. Let's see where it talks about the church committee. All right, here it is right here. After the war, Colby became director of Central Intelligence, and during his tenure, under intense pressure from Congress and the media, adopted the policy of relative openness of the CIA, and all the things that the CIA had done under Dulles and through the 60s, that this guy had a policy of openness under pressure from Congress and the church committee. And he ended up giving up the family jewels. He gave up all of the secrets. And then he was fired when Gerald Ford came in, Gerald Ford, who sat on the Warren Commission. He was fired and replaced with George H.W. Bush. They don't want Tulsi Gabbard to have the power of the DNI to do what William Colby did to let out all of their secrets and to give Congress what they want and holding oversight over all of these intelligence agencies. If she is in control of all of these intelligence agencies, then she is in control of declassifying and being open with Congress. They don't want that. They don't want that. And that's what they're afraid of. That they put this woman on a watch list. She's a member of Congress. She's a member of the United States military, and they put her on this watch list. Take a listen.
According to a shocking new report, former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard was placed on a terror watch list and was surveilled by teams of government agents. Federal Air Marshal whistleblower told Uncover DC that Gabbard was placed in the Quiet Skies program on July 23rd. That's a sinister name. For context, Quiet Skies is a TSA surveillance program that targets passengers who are not included in any terrorist...
TSA, another organization that was created post 9/11. Homeland Security, another government agency that was created post 9/11. Okay. So they put her on this TSA watch list. She's a member of Congress, active member of the United States military, combat vet. Even the other members, lawmakers in Hawaii went to her defense and stood up to ask, the Biden administration, what the heck is going on here? Why do you have a member of Congress and a member of the military on this TSA watch list? What did she do to get on this watch list?
Some Hawaii lawmakers are demanding answers from the TSA.
They want to know why former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is included on the TSA's suspected terrorist watch list. Republican state representatives Gene Ward, Diamond Garcia, David Alcos, and Elijah Perrick sent a joint letter yesterday to the TSA director coming to Gabbard's defense. They claim that air marshals have harassed Gabbard and her husband on flight.
So why is this going on? This is Trump's appointee for Director of National Intelligence. Why is this going on? I had a lot more that I wanted to share with you guys and explain why this is going on and what's going on with Tulsi Gabbard. I just scratched the surface with her. We're going to get back into all of these appointees and what's going on, what they did to Trump in 2016. I'll see you guys on January 6th. Hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys next year.